All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to another mini session. My name is Mike Martinez. This is from the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools office. Our mini session today, we are talking about remote requisitions, purchasing and payable requisitions. We'll kind of go through a little bit of everything today, a little bit on get basics of doing purchasing and payable requisitions, as well as setting up approvers, what kind of security settings you need to have set up. Sort of best practices. We are going to do an awful lot of the stuff in the iVisions workflow today. So you'll be seeing a lot of that if you don't use it already. Along with that, you need to know that you can still do remote requisitions from the core product itself. You just need to know that it behaves a little bit differently than the iVision stuff. There's some things you can do in iVisions that you can't do in the core, and vice versa. Either one is still entirely functional to use for remote requisitions, so it's certainly not a knock on it at all. You just need to be aware that it acts a little bit differently. Today with us, we have Miss Andy De La Rosa. Go ahead and wave your hands, Andy.
Hello.
And then we have Miss Jill Wynn, who's also going to be presenting with us today. So these two have actually done a couple sessions together. By now, you think it works like a finely oiled machine, but every session we've had so far, something has gone wrong. That was totally not our fault. So today we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Andy. So Andy, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Now, can you see my screen?
There we go. Everyone can see your screen. If you're doing a video, give me a big thumbs up if you can see everything and hear everything okay.
Yay.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody to Purchasing and Payables Remote Requisitions. I'm going to start in iVisions. I'm not going to go into detail when or how to enter requisition, but I'm going to just go over a few key points. And from there, you will go into purchasing and payables, purchasing, and control panel. And like Mike said, there's certain things that you can do in iVisions that you can't do in the core product. So in iVisions, to start or create a new requisition, you're going to click the plus sign. And in the core, you normally will right click on the grid and select add. When you have the add requisition window open up, you're going to, of course, fill out all your fields. You're going to enter your line items. So this is just what the screen looks like when you're going to go in to add a new requisition, but I've already added a few requisitions that I'm going to go into and work out of. I'm going to pull up requisition 557. I also won't go into detail on the action items, but I am going to go over the split fund option. I know some districts will use this option. A few, or I'm sure most of you know how to copy a line, the recalculate tax freight, distribute tax and freight, apply discount, and you know that you can also import from Excel. Check budget. That's something I'm sure you all use often. If not, if you exceed your budget, you will get a little pop-up while you're entering trying to submit your requisition, letting you know that you've exceeded that budget. I am going to go over manage documents and split fund. So in this requisition, I've already created a split fund for line number one, line one, and I'm about to create one for line two. What you want to do is highlight your line item. You're going to go to actions and you're going to go to split fund. You'll see that it creates another line for line two. Keep in mind that when it creates the second line, it's basically duplicating the first line that you have. So you want to make sure you go in and change your account code, and then you're going to adjust your quantity. You'll see on the first two that I created, I have an amount of $200, but I wanted to split it at $100 each. So then I had to go in and open those lines and set the quantity as a 0.5. So that's what I'll do for the second one. I'm going to change this. I don't know if it'll.
Well, Andy's kind of updating these account codes. I just want to forgot to mention at the beginning, We have some supplemental documents to kind of go along with the topics we're covering today. They are the link to the Dropbox folder that they are all in is now in the chat. If you're watching this later on YouTube, you can look down in the description below. Links for the documents are in there as well. They're not required for the session today, so you don't need them to follow along, but they are good to look at after the session to help you remind yourself, hey, this is what we covered. This is how that particular item was set up. Also, if you have any questions as we kind of go through these items today, go ahead and type that question into the chat. One of our team members will go ahead and get to that for you, and we'll bring it up to the group here. Good questions always really help out the session, so feel free to ask any questions you need.
So as I'm editing this line item, changing the quantity from 1 to 0.5, always make sure to save that line item. There's times where if your window is not fully maximized, you have to scroll all the way to the right to click the save button. There's times where people have entered line items and then just saved the requisition, but these items never really saved because they weren't saved in this area. So maximize your screen so you can see that save icon. And then once I've edited my line items, I'm gonna click save, or if I'm ready to submit for approval, I can click submit for approval. And that's what I'll do here. This is gonna pop up saying I'm exceeding. We don't have a budget right now in our training database, so I'm gonna click OK. As a matter of fact, wait, before I go back, before I approve this, I wanna go into attaching a document. So from this requisition, I have already attached a requisition. So I'm gonna click on manage documents, and you'll see I've created, or I've attached a quote. Pretend you see a quote here. But you will select from the drop down what you want to attach. There's the quote, you can start typing the first letter of what you want, select it, and then this, it's very, very, very faint. It's a little paper clip, and that's what you will use to go and attach and find your document so that you can upload it to your requisition. And so once you have attached your document, you can now submit for approval and click save.
Just want to mention that when you attach that document, you have that drop down of all those document types. That is actually driven by the purchasing and payable document type within the purchasing and payable module. If you were unfamiliar with that area, don't worry. We have a vendor maintenance section coming up on Friday if you haven't signed up for it already, and I'll go through that section with everybody and talk about adding some different document types in there that you can use throughout the system.
So here I have a few requisitions that I've submitted. Some of them were returned back to me, and you can check out the status, whether they're open, they've been resubmitted or returned, and you can go in and make any type of corrections. You can notate why you're returning that requisition. So let me see if I can go. So I'm gonna go in here and select this first one. Sorry. Where was my?
What were you doing?
Okay, here we go. I've submitted this requisition for approval, but then I'm gonna go in and return it. So you have that option to notate why you are returning this requisition. I gotta open it, don't it? You're gonna go to actions, select your requisitions, go to actions and return requisition. And if I want to email it, from here, I can notate why I'm returning it. That way, when it gets returned to the originator or to the person prior to, they'll know why you returned it, and they can go in and fix that requisition and then go into resubmit it. I think that is all.
I think my boss, Mr. Kuffner, has returned several requisitions to me. Mostly for like stupid stuff. I think one year I tried to submit a jetpack and a foosball table. One made it all the way up to the deputy superintendent, and she happened to catch it before she signed it. So that's why we don't have a jetpack today. Thank you.
That's really all that I was gonna
Anybody?
go over on requisition, so turn it over to Jill.
No questions in there? Don't see any.
No questions so far.
And
That's kind of the basics, and we really just wanted to cover the basics for generating some of the requisitions that we're going to play around with right now. We don't have a full section on just purchasing and payables requisitions. If you're interested in seeing one, let us know so we can put one together for you. We certainly can go into more detail about things like
I'll grab mine.
importing requisitions from Excel, things like that. So let us know what you're interested in. These ideas are kind of driven a combination of whatever suggestions that we get, along with whatever we happen to brainstorm while sitting around twiddling our thumbs. Jill,
Yep.
all you.
Now,
Yep, you're good.
can you see me, everybody? Technology. Got to do what we
That's
got
why
to do.
they pay us the mediocre bucks.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna go more on the approval and getting into the approval process, kind of in the world of setting it all up, which, as you know, can be a little bit different. So we're gonna start in the core, and then when I actually go to approve, I'm gonna flip over to iVision so that you can see what the approval process looks like in there. Again, like Mike said, they're kind of the same, but there's some functionality a little bit different in one or the other. But in order to even attempt to use approvers, we need to start in the core product here. You need to be able to set up your approval world. It has to be somebody who has security, because all of that is down here under your workflow configuration. We need to hit user security. So I'm kind of going to jump in. If you have questions as we're going along, please feel free to ask those questions and we'll try and come up with your answers along the way. But here we go. First thing you have to do is set it up in your distributed accountability centers. In here is where you kind of control the world of approving for your requisitions. If you look at a site, when you're going to add your DACs in here, this is your normal stuff, naming them. Well, in this section here, DAC type, that kind of controls the flow of the requisition and the purchase and payable site. There's two different types of users in the DAC world. One is a central site user. A central site user is usually your purchasing or HR and payroll for the payroll world. And that allows them access to all the DACs across the entire software, as opposed to limiting somebody. When you're in here, let me show you a central site user. You have a couple of options. Once you say that they're a central site user, you're alerting Visions that they need to be able to see everything. Under there is require approval. That's a box you can turn on and you can turn off. What that does is your purchasing and payable site people that you've now said, this DAC, I want them to be the P&P site. If this box is unchecked, when they enter requisitions, somebody that is assigned to that specific DAC, their requisitions are going to flip right over to purchasing to be made into a purchase order. There'll be zero approval process. It skips it all. If you want their created requisitions to follow the approval of the DAC they're creating them for, you check off require approval. That'll force it to go through the setup approval process. Key thing there, a lot of times we do get those questions, hey, my rec went right to purchasing. If they're a central site user, it's controlled right here. Warehouse is the exact same. If you have a warehouse, it'll work the exact same way. When you're in the warehouse world, if they're a central main warehouse people, that will be checked, but the require approval is the same thing. Is their purchase rec going to follow the approval process or flip right into being made into a purchase order? A couple other things to note when you're also setting up your DACs. Down here under budget control, you have check budget and you have maintain budget. So check budget is going to go out and look at the account code they're using to see if there's any budget available. When you saw Andy doing her requisition, we had the check budget on. So a screen popped up and told her that her budget was overdrawn. If we had maintained budget on, she would not have been able to go any further. She would have had to either reduce her requisition or go to her powers that be for more money for the jetpack that we'd like to get.
It should also be noted that when that check budget thing popped up for Andy, that she just kind of blew right through it without looking at it in typical user fashion.
Absolutely, because they have the option, if it's only check budget, they can blow right through it, keep on going. The other field you have here is this PO print limit. That isn't really used a lot here, but possibly on your central sites. What this does is if you put a dollar value in there, then that's the maximum purchase order amount that somebody assigned to this DAC can print. So most times you don't have your DACs printing your purchase orders, but know that you can use it. Other than that, you leave it at 0. Then we have this override range down here. So this is not really used a lot at a district. However, you need to be aware that it's here. You can set your requisition numbers for a sequence to be used specifically by a DAC. For example, if you wanted all of this specific DAC's requisitions to start with 100, I could put 100 and then give them their next count. Maybe it's 1,000 because I think that's where it needs to be. I could set a maximum that they can't go beyond 100 and 2,000. So they can only create 1,000 requisitions. That's what this field is for. Yeah, you're going to think about it before you use it.
I think it's kind of cool. So
It could be. We did talk this through. Mike and I did kind of talk about this. If you have multiple sites, like you can see my DAC numbers over here, maybe I wanted to assign the requisition numbers so that I can easily see from my rec grid who they're for. Absolutely.
right. So if you had remote requisitioners at Kennedy School, which is site 103, maybe you set the minimum value, minimum number. So everything starts with 103. It may be a designator for the fiscal year. Maybe 21-103
Right.
is fiscal year 21 for site number 103, and then 6 numbers behind it. It's kind of interesting. That being said, I've not seen anyone anywhere ever use those features.
A little quirk about it, if you think you want to use it with the purchase order number, you have to use it with the requisition. I can use the requisition numbers by themselves, but if I want to use the purchase order number, you have to use these fields. If you wanted to give it a try, you might create a provisional, get a sandbox, set it up, see how it looks, see if you like what it does. But again, we haven't seen that, so totally up to you.
If anyone uses this feature, let us know. We'd love to see it in action and love to hear your thoughts on how well it works, or maybe it's the worst thing ever, or the best thing since sliced
Right,
bread.
right.
We love hearing new information from somebody.
Yes.
Oh, we use them for our student activities deck. That's yes. That would the student activities or
Oh,
auxiliary
that would be
services, that would
really
be
good.
amazing for that.
Yeah, sure.
You
You could
could
have
really
everything
do
start
that.
with 850 or something like, yeah, that could be a great idea.
Oh, Francie over at Dysart. So Dysart uses these. So if Dysart uses the, you know it must be good.
Must be good. That's right. And you use them and like, yeah, using them on student accounts, that's perfect. So that's what you have for the requisition world, where that's kind of all we're going to touch on in here is just setting them all up. So I'm going to cancel out of here. Once you have gone in and said, hey, we're going to be using the requisitions, and you've set that world up, the next place that you need to go is actually into user security, because now you need to make sure that your users have the ability to approve requisitions, etc. So I'm going to pick on our little friend in here, Crystal Ball. There's a few features that you want to look at in here. The setting our approval limit, she's not a purchase order person, but if they were, if I had, let's say that the somebody needs to only in purchasing, you might have multiple people and you want only this specific person over here, maybe the director or senior buyer, to approve over $100,000. You could set that limit here. But for a requisition user, for that remote requisition user, the couple of fields that you want to check out or understand are these two fields right here. Limit to expense accounts on requisitions and invoices. That means they can only use what's classified as an expense account in your chart of accounts on a requisition. They couldn't mistakenly use a payroll account, or they couldn't use a benefit line or cash. They can only use expense accounts. Real good button to have checked, kind of a best practice when you're setting up remote purchase rec users, because they don't need to see all the other accounts. The second one here, limit to their own requisitions. That only allows them to see requisitions created by them. It is a good feature when you're working on somebody who's got multiple users within a DAC. However, understand that if that person leaves, when you return a rec, it goes in that person who left's bucket, can kind of get hung up in never land. So make sure you check that information. Next, allowing them to copy it to the next year. This is a fantastic feature. We used to turn it on at more of during rollover to allow for all of those purchase orders that are the year to year, your utilities, your repeats. You can turn this feature on and it will allow that requisition user to take that purchase order and create the requisition in the rollover year. Another great idea. Remember, the only piece with this is, again, if that user no longer works for us, if Crystal Ball ends at the end of the year and I can override things and go in and roll them over to the next year, it goes in Crystal Ball's bucket. So it doesn't allow you to change it to somebody else's.
So remind me, it's been a while since I've played around with that, but when that rolls into the next year, that keeps the current rec number, does it not? The current rec and PO number?
No, it follows the sequence in the next year. No PO is created. It's a requisition. It'll put the requisition in the requisition users bucket where they can then edit account numbers, do what they need, quantity, etc., and approve it on through the new approval process.
Okay.
Because it has no purchase order number, kind of because it's going to go into the requisition world. There is a couple of things that could hang it up when you try this. If you're a really good district and you're using awards, and you've got your vendor awards linked to requisitions, that will cause a problem if that has been an expired award. If it's already reached the date, you're gonna have to remove the award, copy it over, etc. So there's a couple little pieces that when you're creating your requisitions that will freeze it if those type of things end. So we're in here. Those are really, the other one here is on a central site. If somebody becomes a central site user, that purchasing person who can see everything, do you want them to be able to override an approval? This is invoices, you want recs. Overriding the approval means if it's sitting in Andy's bucket and she's out, I can go ahead and approve it and send it on. And that's kind of controlled right here for the central site users. So we good? Okay, so that's setting up the approver. So I've set up the DAC that I wanted to make sure they could do their thing. I've set up my budget limits. I've now gone in and set up my users as to who can approve. Now I need to set up approver accounts. Approver accounts work on your account mask just like the rest of Visions. This is the route it's going to follow. You can use all masks, you can limit it, but the key when you're setting up these user accounts, it is a right-click add. The approver, when you hit the drop down and have add an approver, it needs to be added for every single DAC that you want them to approve. So for instance, here, Andy can right now, she's set for the district office in Garfield. Well, if I wanted her to approve at Kennedy, I'd have to find them. We don't have them set up to follow approval, but let's say food service. I would have to select her from the food service world. When you drop down, I didn't have a choice for the DAC. When you add an approver, it automatically brings up the DACs that are in the approver world. And now I have to say, bring her into food service. When I do that, I can then put a mask in here and I could say that she can approve everything in a 510. That's what I want her to prove. It'll bring her here. And now I've masked her code. You can mask by any of these fields, just like in the rest of the world. There is one other piece here, this threshold. When you put a dollar amount in the threshold, what that means is this person, it happens to be me, if a district office requisition is created, regardless of the account number, it needs to be over $1,000 or more before it's going to hit my approval. If it's not, it's going to go skip me and go right to the next approver. That's what your threshold here is. So if I had this set to $10,000, anything 9,999 and below, I would not see, skip right over me.
So that way you're not seeing every single requisition for
single
every pencil and whatnot.
And let's say you have a world that you're capital and only you want somebody to see capital, but you need a second set of eyes over that 50,000 range, you're 100. When you set them up for their DAC, you control it here. I can still have a filter. I could go into this one. I still have a filter, but now my threshold is going to be $10,000. So when a food service requisition is created, Andy will only see it if it's $10,000 or more.
So no one notices when you order like 2 cases of Jell-O food cups,
There you
but
go.
if they order a pallet of T-bone steaks,
It might stop
it'll
it,
probably
Andy.
pop up.
There you go.
And you would have an amazing food service program.
I would eat lunch there if they're serving T-bones. Just let us know, anybody out there? So the next piece is very important. We're going to talk about reassigning improvers. So I've got my approvers set up and Andy decides she's leaving next year and she's not going to be here. Reassigning the approver. I am already an approver in there. I'm going to temporarily take over Andy. That is going to be different from reassigning approvers, okay? A temporary takeover I don't want to see my name in here twice. I don't want to have to approve it and then go to Jeff and then approve it again. That is controlled with an alternate approver from here. I can mass assign everybody, or I can go in and everywhere that I see Andy, I can make me an alternate. That means you people out there that are sending requisitions are going to look like it's in Andy's bucket, but I can approve them and it will say that it was in Andy's bucket and it was approved by Jill. That is a temporary replacement because if I go in and reassign the approvers, now I'm going to show up twice. I don't want to do that, but maybe I want to make a new approver. So there's requisitions in Andy's bucket. So first thing you want to do is you can see the user. So if I go to Andy and look at requisitions, there's nothing. So good, it's not in her bucket. Let's reassign Crystal Ball. Even if she wasn't an approver, I could make her Andy, include if it's an alternate. When you click OK, it does that. It goes everywhere she has it. It says we're going to go ahead and set her up. I don't have her defined, but that is the feature. I don't want to change ours because there's only Jeff, myself, and Andy, and we're going to go into that in a second. But know the difference between a temporary replacement, use an alternate, go into the approvers and set an alternate. You can set it by a time frame. You can set it to be permanent. That is temporary and doesn't look like the routing has changed. Come Andy is done and I have the new person and Crystal Ball is going to replace her. Then I want to reassign it so that it's easier to reassign it than to attempt to pick out who should be where and have to go back into your account masks. A lot of times they do that by mistake, and then they're like, okay, now Jill is in here 3 times. I've got to pick it apart to replace where she's going to be.
So it's vacation versus termination.
Yeah, and the termination, you want the replacement person already in Visions, already set up as an approver before you reassign. Okay, because that way you're not muddying up the waters on your approval. Yes, it will still show it's in Andy's bucket, but it's only going to show that until Andy gets replaced. Okay. So I think that's kind of it for setting it up. We've now set up our world. We told our DAC, we told our users, we made approvers and approver accounts, and we kind of set the world the way we think we want it to flow. Always use that keyword that we think we want it to flow. Now we're going to jump into iVisions. I do want to show a couple of things. My workflow, you all are probably familiar now with my workflow. This says I have 2 requisitions to approve. I am in the core product. If I click on this, it keeps me in the core product. As you see, I'm still here. I haven't gone to iVisions. PARs jump you to iVisions, requisitions do not. Okay, just to know if you have iVisions. At this point, I am going to jump over here to iVisions. So as you can see, my workflow is here. Now, when I click this, it will open purchase requisitions here. I can get to it from my workflow, which it's gonna, I'm sorry. No, it shouldn't. I've been clicking back and forth. It's coming. Slowly. Oh my goodness, it did. Okay. Thanks. I have to close it. Yes.
For those of you that may be interested in learning about EPARs and the routing on them, there's a session coming up on them, I believe in April some point. April 14th, the invitation has not gone out on that yet. I might actually be sending that out on Friday. So if you are not on the mailing list already, please sign up. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat a little bit later today, but make sure you're on the MCSS mailing list. That way you can still get notifications of when all the new session registrations are available, as well as when those sessions, the YouTube video is posted online. So make sure you're checking those out so you don't miss anything.
All righty, so now we've gone into iVisions, and when you go into iVisions, there's my workflow. This is looking very familiar because it's following the same view that you have in the core product. I can go into requisitions from here, purchase requisitions, or I can open up my workflow and I can go in from my workflow. Either one works. When you go into purchase requisitions, remember I'm an approver and a central site user. So my view initially is going to show only those requisitions that are in my bucket. For your requisition users that are remote site users, it will show them only the requisitions in their bucket. And if they're the originator, it'll say that it's the originator that has it. There is a feature where we can, as a central site user or an approver, you can show all requisitions and it'll show me any requisitions in the system and where they are. For those that are kind of new to the system, when you see this AP, your world immediately goes to accounts payable. Yeah, no, that means think of it as at purchasing, because that is now at purchasing to be ready to be set into a purchase order. So we have a couple of requisitions in my bucket, and I'm going to get rid of all so we can just see that the requisitions are here and how the world looks. Yes, very similar to Visions. I can check it off and I can go actions and I can approve that requisition, just like in the core product. I can double click, I can go into it and I can see all the information. I can make changes that I need, etc. Also from the grid, there's a column that says internal notes. You can see if there were any internal notes. In this case, they were. We returned this requisition and that's the stamp from us. We didn't put notes in it. So you'll see if there's notes prior to that you may want to read. Again, you'd have to click into the requisition and go to the note field. Now I can add my own notes. Just like in this core product, we can add our own notes. I'm going to save it. I feel like I'm like out at some sites with a little slower internet here for a moment. Need our Jeopardy
It
music.
should be noted, especially if you are onboarding new people that are new to inputting requisitions or remote requisitions, that when they append an internal note, that is there
That's where I
forever.
was going. Yeah.
So, and if you've ever been to one of Diana Betancourt's user group meetings, she has some very funny stories about people that have put stuff in there that were probably ill-advised, to say the
Right,
least,
right.
talking smack about whatever and whoever and things like that. So just be aware that those notes are in there forever. They cannot be changed.
So there's my note, what I typed, but you see it stamps the date and time that it was entered. So that's a really good thing, but it's also know that feature. Yeah, like Mike said, if I accidentally typed my POTS, it's in there forever. You can't go change it. I can't modify it. I can't delete it. I can do anything I want. It's not going to let me. Internal notes will print on the requisition if you have it set to print them, and it'll be looking here. PO notes, please know that that field prints on the purchase order. So you don't want to type anything bad. You have to be nice here. That is going to print on my purchase order.
Yeah,
When
like
you
right
hit-
now you might put on there, delivered during these office hours and
Right. If you don't have it set to already do that in your DAX settings, you can put notes here. Only deliver Monday through Thursday, due to COVID or
wear a
whatever.
mask.
Here is, now you see the internal note change to show mine because it shows you the most recent one as much as it can in that field. This next I want to point out here is has documents. Has documents will say no unless you've attached a document. Like Andy went into, you can attach a quote to one of these. Well, I'm going to open it and I want to see what that document is that they attached. So I go into manage documents. Here's her document. I'm not going to open it because it's going to be a template, but here is the document. You can just double click it. You can view it. If there were multiple, these are your search filters that work just like anywhere else in iVisions. You could put the word quote and then you can say that it part of, contains, etc. So that's our attached documents. I've looked at the requisition. I'm happy with the requisition. I think it's good to go. Put a checkbox, actions, and approve. I do want to go over a couple of these options here. Check budget. When you hit check budget and you're in iVisions, this box comes up. A little bit different from the core product. When you do check budget in the core product, it immediately goes out. Over here, you have to say, hey, I want you to check all the accounts that are over budget, show all the accounts. You want to group it by rec. You can do your whole screen. In order for me to get it to show up, I'm going to go ahead and hit this OK. And we want to open this. And there it is. And it tells me the requisition. I can see the budget balance, etc. Okay. Kind of nice little feature to have out here in iVisions. Almost kind of wish it would do that in the core product, but a little different. Checking vendor alerts, same thing. You can hit that button and it'll bring up any vendor alerts that may be. I don't have any. They're within the limits as you see up here. So I don't have to worry about that. Show vendor alerts in the grid. It'll bring in a column that will show you my vendor alerts if they have any. And I don't, I got nothing. That's a good thing. View requisition, same as in the core. I click that button and I can view a sample of that requisition. Oh, I didn't have any selected. You see up here, this little yellow? Those are really kind of out of the way, but they come up at the top. If you're a core user, you're not used to looking at the top. Show requisitions. It's going to give you a sample copy of what the requisition is going to look like. approval log. The approval log, I have. There we go. I selected one. It's yelling at me. Apparently it doesn't like this. It worked on my. Let me refresh my screen.
While you're doing that, I just want to point out a couple things that popped up in the chat. Trenda pointed out that when you copy a rec to a new year, internal notes will not copy to the new year, but PO notes will.
Correct.
So just keep that in mind. So if it's something, and PO notes are usually associated with something that's going to be long-standing at the district. So just keep that in mind that those PO notes will
I
copy
don't
to
know
the
why
new
it's
year.
not working from here.
Yes, and it would be awesome. Chris, great suggestion. It would be if you could have the internal
Try
notes
selecting
print on
a
the
row.
file copy of the P. What?
That was me. Try selecting the row.
What are you talking about, the remote?
The row.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, that's stupid.
That is very stupid. Why would you select the row if I have to
I was
select
like,
the checkbox?
Oh my God, some of the things that happen, you have to wonder is like, do they have any users over at Tyler? I mean,
Right.
some of the stuff is just so freaking inconsistent.
Like when you're split funding and it duplicates the entire line. If you didn't catch that, you're going to charge it twice, you know, and order 200 jetpacks instead of just.
Right. I mean, why would you do that?
Right, exactly. That, so I guess checking the box is not enough. We've got to check the line. But as you can see, here's the approval log, and I approved for Andy and Jeff. So my name shows that they were the approver, but I'm an alternate for Andy and I'm the one who approved it. If I put notes, it would have those notes. Thanks, Jeff. Returning to originator, returning to prior approver. Both I can do. I can return this. The rec is already selected. When I say okay, it's going to come up and ask me what I want to do. An internal note, we'll print an internal note on the requisition. Email, we'll open up the email screen. I'm going to go ahead and hit that again so you can just see what it does. No, none will not put any notes at all. It'll just flip it back. When I go here to return it, it automatically puts in the email address of the originator, gives them what the subject is, and then here I can type whatever I want. And it goes back to them. Notice there is no signature. It's just going to say it's coming back from here. You might want to put a little more information in there. On your note fields, when you put a note, it will print in your internal notes here that it was returned if you say internal note. Other action items, quick approval. I made a note on that, so bear with me a second, guys.
I hope that note says do not use.
Quick approval. So the quick approval, do not use. That is actually for a central site user. If you're a central site user, you can do a quick approval and it'll skip through the next approver. Only works if you're a central site. I'm a central site user, so it's not grayed out. If I do a quick approval, I really don't want this rec to leave my bucket at the moment. But I could do the quick approval and it's just going to move it to the next level in the queue. So my next level is into purchasing. Remember the AP at purchasing. But if Andy were to do that, she's a central site user and she were to do it, it would skip by the next person. And if you did it again, it would skip by the next person and so on and so forth. So that's your quick approval. Another feature out here that I really kind of like in the iVisions world, this isn't in the core, but as you know, I'm in the requisition screen. And if I do alternate approvers, I can actually go in right here and I can set my DAC. I think I'm in business service. No, where am I at? I'm at Garfield. I can set my DAC to say, I want an alternate approver to be Jeff. I can put dates in here and it will start automatically and make him the alternate approver for the next week. Alternate approvers is a function that often gets overlooked best practice when you are setting up your approvers is to keep that in mind, because this time of year, when the year starts to end and you have all your administrators going on vacation and things, requisitions and DPARs, this falls under both, kind of get stuck in that world up there. So being able to add your alternate approver, when either, like I said, you set them up, or if you get notified by an approver that they're going on vacation, put something in place that you go in and set up these alternates. It'll keep your business moving. It looks like I might be hung up. I'm gonna get rid of that. Yeah, I think I was hung up.
You know, there should be, they should make an email alert so that if an approver puts in
Yes.
a vacation request or a sick time request, it checks to see if that person is an approver and then notifies one of the
That would be a
administrators.
phenomenal idea because it's used so many places along your visions. That would be a really great feature to have. Best practice is keep up on those alternate approvers. It won't get your requisitions stuck in somebody's bucket, and then your central site users have to go move them along, or whoever you've given that permission to. So keep that in mind. And basically, that's it. That is kind of overview. If you're a rec user, you want to use this for your remote work sites and you want to set up your secretaries, they can be able to do requisitions controlled in their user security is going to show them what they have access to here. Remember, I'm a full access central site. They wouldn't see all this other stuff if you shut it off. They can go to the control panel and have the same features in the control panel that you have in the core. They can see things that are in progress. They would see, they would see that, because Murphy's Law, I cannot get through a presentation without something throwing up on me. But they could come in here and just like in the core product, they can apply the selection and see their business if they're set to only see theirs. If they're set to see their entire DAC, they'll see their entire DAC. All the requisitions that are in pending, all the purchase orders, etc. There.
So Jill, we did have a question pop up.
Sure.
How do you set up the quick approval access?
Quick approval is already set by a central site user. Quick approval has to be a central site user only. Remember when we were in the DAX and we said that that was a central site, we could see everything. It's set up right there. That's it. If you are a central site user, you will have that action. I believe if I log in a Crystal central site user, Crystal Ball, she is, okay. I don't have somebody I can log into iVisions as that is not a central site user. It will be grayed out. They won't have that feature.
I also want to make sure that for those of you that are not familiar with some of the terminology, when we say a central site user, that is typically, first of all, it's typically going to be the district office. It is also the DAC that has that little checkbox in there as a P&P site. We kind of use it interchangeably, and we try to correct that in our documentation as well. But the purchasing and payable site that you're going to see referred to as a central site, not only in the Infinite Visions help, you'll see it referred to it in some of our documentation, the way we talk about it. So I apologize. I know we have people from kind of different places here. So if we use a terminology you're not familiar with, then do definitely holler at somebody.
Please, yeah, ask. And this is where it's controlled. So if I have this checkbox turned on, that means I have just told the system that this DAC called district office is now a central site DAC. A central site DAC means that they can see everything. So for example, Kennedy School is DAC 103. If they are not labeled as a central site DAC, the only thing users assigned to that DAC will see is their documents, their requisitions, their PARs, whatever the case may be, their account codes. They won't see everything. A central site user sees it all. You have various central sites along here, as you can see, and I'll just kind of touch base since we're in there. This controls the purchase and payables. I'm a central site. If you have warehouse, you're a warehouse central site user. Same applies. You can see all the DACs, all the data within those two modules. If you're a general ledger site, You can see everything again, all account codes, all features based on your user security within the general ledger module. Payroll and human resources, see everybody. Think of this controls those departments, purchasing, finance, payroll, HR, to what they can and cannot see. It's controlled right here. So if I'm a central site user, I have purchasing and payables checked off on my DAC, I will see quick approval.
The other checkbox I want to make sure to point out is the GL site. And that's particularly important when you start talking about remote requisitions. Anything flagged as a GL site will have access to all accounts all the time. So your remote sites should not be a GL site. Your remote sites like on here, Garfield site, Clinton Ranch, Kennedy School, those should all be limited by their DAC accounts or their DAC account mask for whatever unit code they have
So
to
you
apply
don't
to.
want it in here.
They should not be a GL site. We've seen setups before. Usually it's small districts where they just turn GL site on for everybody. It's really not the best way to do that. You will have your GL site for your district or your business services. And then everybody else will be monitored through DAC accounts or the DAC account masks. But that will come into play, especially when you turn on these remote requisitions. And if you're a P&P site user or a central site user and you're putting in a requisition, you're still beholden to those DAC accounts. So if you go to enter in a requisition for a site that does not have access to that account, you're not going to be able to enter that account in, regardless of the fact that you're in a central site.
Correct.
So there's some little things here and there that to be aware of. If you run into them or if you have questions, we're more than happy to help.
When you're entering a requisition, even if, like Mike said, I'm a central site user, but if I, upon entering the rec, say I'm doing it for Kennedy School and I select their DAC, I have now limited my account code access, et cetera, budget, all of that to the Kennedy School DAC, and that requisition is following the Kennedy School approvers. So remember when I was setting up the approvers and the approver accounts, I put in food service here. Well, that would control that if a requisition was done for food service, that's the only one, and it's at $10,000, it's going to go from the originator to purchasing. It's not going to stop anywhere if I've said I'm a food service and I'm using a food service account. So that it's controlled by the DAC when you're entering your requisitions. So kind of there we go. Mike, do we have any other questions hanging out in there?
We don't have any other questions, but we do have a couple things that I want to point out. There were some good suggestions on here that came through the chat. First of all, it'd be awesome if for the internal notes to print on the file copy of the PO. I thought that was a checkbox. Is it not? Apparently
in your
not.
purchase and payables?
Yeah, purchasing and payables. You want to
think
go
you-
print. We'll double check that. Give me a second.
You know, I remember seeing something here about internal notes. Speak up, anybody that I see a couple of you that I know are on there that you know if that works. Right here, print internal notes on the requisition. You see, I'm in purchasing and payable default settings. This will print them on the requisition, but you don't want internal notes on the PO. You want PO notes on the PO. So if I do it on the requisition, that should print on the file copy because I've now said to print those notes on the requisition. So if I'm printing a file copy and you know, I can turn it on, but I don't know if it goes backwards. Let's see, we had a requisition that had internal notes. 558, which is still in somebody's bucket. So I have internal notes on this one. Let's go in and look at a file copy. I believe because I've turned it on and I know we've used this before, the internal notes do print out. I just don't know if it's on every copy. There's my notes right there.
Okay, but that is, again, that is on the requisition.
But it's on the requisition, right? Because now, once it gets turned into a purchase order, no, you will not see the internal notes.
Another suggestion on here was we would love to have the timestamp back in the approval log.
Agreed.
So here's the funny thing is that timestamp never went away. As far as the data is concerned, that timestamp is still there. You just can't see it. For
Right.
some reason, they narrowed it down to just the date. And especially if you are a district that's really on this sort of stuff and you have a quick turnaround time from requisition to PO, the timestamp really helps as to, all right, when did you push this along? When did you push that
Right.
along? Instead of everybody
Right.
having the same date. That's the fact that they actually took away that view is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Another suggestion, how do you remove an old approver that is no longer there?
Reassign.
So yeah,
That's where your reassign approver comes in. If you've hired somebody to replace that approver, reassign. If I go back to, let's say it's myself, that Andy, let's use the scenario that Andy has left and I'm going to be approving for her, I would reassign and remove the duplicates. That way you catch anything that's in the world. Reassign when an approver is no longer there. And that's from here, reassign approver. Now, there is a kick to that. You have to have that approver active in administration. So if your people are right on it and somebody terminates and that administrator goes right into the administration side and inactivates that person, they're not going to show up as a current approver because they're inactive. You have to turn them on as active, come over here, reassign them, and then go back into administration and inactivate them.
Really?
Yes, you really do. If they're inactive, they will not show up as a current. They'll be in the
stupid.
approver list, but you can't reassign them.
Okay, that to me, that's a bug.
Maybe, I don't
That should
know
be a
if
bug, because if you have someone that's in the approver grid,
they
you
should
should
still be
have the
able
option to
to.
reassign that approver, regardless of whether or not that person is active or not.
Right. So a lot of times you see that at the turnover of the new year. You roll over to the new year, you get into the new year and you say, okay, all these people are gone. Mike is gone and we're going to reassign him. He's already been terminated in the old fiscal year. We've already gone into administration and we've deactivated him. I can't reassign him because he's not in the new year as a current approver. You're not on. Turn them on, flip it and turn them off.
Okay,
That's
so
what you got to do.
That's some
Might be a
BS right
bug.
there.
Tyler community.
If I terminate you, first thing you're losing is access to everything.
Right, right.
Like by the time you get out to your car in the parking
done,
lot, you're
right.
done.
Right, which is why you got to be right on this stuff. Yeah. I can
Yeah.
override it. I remember central site user can approve and move it on, but you need to replace them. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, and especially right now, districts are going to have a lot of fluidity as far as their staff is concerned. You'll have people leaving, people non-renewing, people retiring. Congratulations on those. I still got like 9 years and 9
Yeah,
months.
I'm not
Not that
going
I'm
anywhere.
counting.
Not yet, not yet.
Just, yeah, just make sure you're reassigning those approvers. You're looking at their user security. You're turning.
So
off
I
all the
want to
things you
touch
need
on
do.
this last comment here. Somebody said if they're inactive, why not just remove them from the list? Absolutely. But then some of these lists are very long. You have a lot of people, a lot of DACs, a lot of account codes, and maybe you have a lot of account code masks. If I just completely remove them, 100% doable. I can go in here and she is now gone. If somebody comes back, I've got to go through the process of building them back into here and I have to bring them back on. So
And who knows what kind of havoc that would cause if there was a requisition sitting at that particular approver.
correct.
Because we've seen in the past, and I
we've
believe
lost
that's still
things.
an issue. If you remove an approver that currently has a requisition, that requisition is now stuck.
It is.
It's,
It
if you
is.
call Tyler support, they call it, it's out in limbo.
You have to put that approver back in, approve it passed. It's not a happy world. So think ahead of time. Alternate approvers always for your temporary and reassign on your terminates, but make sure you've got the new person. So there we go.
All right.
Some great questions.
Yeah, yeah. Can you stop your screen sharing there? Jill?
I suppose I can, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see.
It's the big red
Stop
box.
sharing. There we go.
And that's it. We're done. It's 11 o'clock. We made it to an hour. Thank you for everybody who joined us today. It was a lot of fun kind of going through this and seeing this. The nice thing about this is the product changes so much And that as we do these mini sessions, we kind of relearn and go back and like, oh, they added this, or oh, they added this. So we're learning right along with you. Again, if you have questions or if you have suggestions on what it is that you want to see here for a mini session, we're still doing this. We have our next sessions. The invitation will go out for them on Friday afternoon. Our next session, vendor maintenance cleanup, I'll be doing on Friday, 10 o'clock. After that, we have a mini session on the 14th of April and on the 21st of April, going through EPARS routing and garnishments. So for those people that like the refresher on garnishments, you're gonna see what's new and what would happen if minimum wage happens to increase.
Again.
And we're only talking about federal minimum wage because state minimum wage goes up all the freaking time. Federal minimum wage for garnishments is really the only minimum wage you need to worry about. But thank you again for everybody for joining us today. It was nice having you all on. Have a great week. Maybe I'll see you on Friday. If not, have a great weekend. Good luck getting your vaccine shots.
Yay, yay.
Yes. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.